During the mid to late 2000s, there were a handful of teams in the NBA that were trying new strategies and techniques to try to exploit new ways to win basketball games, and one of those teams were the Orlando Magic, a team that brought a new twist to the meaning of inside out, as this was a team that built their identity through a rim-running defensive monster of a player in Dwight Howard and surrounded him with a plethora of players who were three-point marksmen, some of which were scrappy defenders, and others gave the Orlando Magic a level of flexibility that was way ahead of their time. A team that had a pretty quick rise to NBA excellence as they made an NBA Finals appearance, however, had a faster fall to becoming an irrelevant franchise in the NBA. So that leaves us with one question: what exactly happened? But before I'm able to answer that question, huge shout out goes to today's sponsors, and that is SeatGeek. SeatGeek is a platform that allows its users to buy tickets to all kinds of events. Regardless if you want to go to a concert, a comedy show, or see your favorite team play, SeatGeek always has your back. And I've stated this before and I'll say it again, I use SeatGeek all of the time. Two reasons for this: A, they give you really good prices on really good seats, and B, it's extremely easy to find the tickets that you're searching for, thanks to SeatGeek's ability to not only organize great ticket prices, but also making sure you get really good seats to the event that you're trying to attend, and on top of that, it's color coordinated as well, so it makes it extremely easy for you to find great deals. And for all of my first time users, SeatGeek is giving me a promo code to allow you to get $20 off on your first purchase. All you have to do is type in LOW, L-O-W, and you'll get even more savings. And also, to make it even easier for you, there is a link in the description as well, so you can click on that and it'll shoot you right to the platform. Thank you to SeatGeek for sponsoring this video, and let's figure out what exactly happened to the Orlando Magic. Our story begins in the very busy summer of 2004, after the Orlando Magic came off an embarrassing 21-win season, which pushed the frustrated Tracy McGrady to demand a trade. And since the Tracy McGrady and Grant Hill experiment never took off as expected, the organization decided to grant his wishes, and on June 29th, 2004, Tracy McGrady was traded to the Houston Rockets. But everything wasn't a negative for the organization, because in the summer of 2004, this was the same offseason in which the Orlando Magic selected Dwight Howard with the first overall pick, traded a 2005 pick to receive Jameer Nelson from the Denver Nuggets, and also decided to sign Hedo Turkoglu, one of the more underrated players throughout the 2000s and a player that would go on to play a very pivotal role on this team. But even with all of the new additions and Grant Hill being healthy, for the next 3 seasons the Orlando Magic were still a losing franchise. Fortunately for them though, in 2007, having a record of 40-42 was enough to make the playoffs, giving some of the young players some playoff experience, but didn't really last too long as they were bounced out in the first round by the Detroit Pistons. Which then leads us to the summer of 2007, another very important offseason for the Orlando Magic, as they had to make some tough decisions while also adding some more pieces to the team as well. They decided to allow Grant Hill to walk and sign with the Phoenix Suns. They fired their head coach in Brian Hill and brought in Billy Donovan. Yes, that Billy Donovan. However, Billy Donovan decided to change his mind at the last minute, which gave Stan Van Gundy the opportunity to step up and become the new coach of the Orlando Magic. But probably one of the most overlooked additions, not only to this team, but throughout the entire 2000s, is the Orlando Magic signing Rashard Lewis. Rashard Lewis was a 6'10 forward who was coming off of his 3 best seasons in Seattle. Within those 3 seasons, he was a consistent 20-point scorer, a phenomenal 3-point shooter, had a little bit of hops on him as well, and was an all-star within those 3 years as well. And adding Rashard Lewis to this Orlando Magic team gave them an identity that was extremely difficult to defend, as the Orlando Magic now had a front court that consisted of 3 players who were 6'10 and taller, with a monster in the middle with Dwight Howard, and 2 forwards who were both going to be on the perimeter since they were sharpshooters with both Hedo Turkoglu and Rashard Lewis. And even beyond their front court, the Orlando Magic had a very clear understanding on how exactly they wanted to build their team. The roster was composed of sharpshooters that all surrounded Dwight Howard, some of which were scrappy defenders to make sure that they didn't lose their edge on the other side of the basketball. And I'm not trying to get too far ahead of myself, however, I do believe a lot of people interpret this team just as Dwight Howard and a bunch of nobodies, but even with Dwight Howard dominating inside, this team would still go on to be one of the better three-point shooting teams in the NBA for the next 4 consecutive seasons. And this dynamic, as well as the improvement of Hedo Turkoglu, who improved so much so that by the end of the 2008 season, he was named Most Improved Player of the Year, really surprised the NBA and would make the Orlando Magic championship contenders. By the end of the 2008 season, the Orlando Magic were a 52-win team, finished top 10 in both offense and defense, and the growth from Dwight Howard was eye-opening. He not only was an all-star and an all-NBA performer, but made his first all-defensive team selection that year as well. Also, he ended that season averaging nearly 21 points and led the NBA in rebounds with 14 a game while recording over 2 blocks. The Orlando Magic were going to make the playoffs, but unfortunately were knocked out in the second round by the Detroit Pistons, but the improvement was not overlooked by the NBA. And by the beginning of the 2008-2009 season, they were one of the favorites to make it out of the Eastern Conference. Their probability rose even further once Kevin Garnett suffered an injury during the middle of the season, and by the end of the 2009 season, you could really start to see what this team was made out of. They finished with a record of 59 wins, were the 11th ranked offense in the NBA and the number 1 ranked defense in the league, and because of this, as well as the improvement from Dwight Howard yet again, as he led the NBA in rebounding for his 2nd consecutive season, led the NBA in blocks as well, and finally received his first Defensive Player of the Year award. That level of greatness that we saw from Dwight Howard consistently took the Orlando Magic to a whole new level, and they were able to make it past the Boston Celtics and the Cleveland Cavaliers into the NBA Finals. Now, I know a lot of people make arguments claiming that the Orlando Magic really had no chance against the Los Angeles Lakers as they lost in 5 games. However, coming from someone who watched that series live, that series was way closer than what I think a lot of people make it out to be. But nevertheless, they still lost in 5 games, and a lot of people were not sold on this young team, as many critics will continue to claim that three-point shooting teams will never win championships, that the offense is too dependent on creating shots through Dwight Howard, and if Kevin Garnett was healthy, then they would never have been able to make it to the NBA Finals. Because of that kind of thinking, I honestly believe it pushed the Orlando Magic in the wrong direction in the summer of 2009, as they decided to part ways with Hedo Turkoglu and bring in Ryan Anderson and Vince Carter through a trade from the New Jersey Nets. I've stated this before in the Vince Carter video, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this season, but long story short, it really didn't work out for them whatsoever, as they wanted Vince Carter to be a shot creator on the perimeter who didn't have to depend on Dwight Howard to create offense for himself. However, Vince Carter throughout the entire season was extremely inconsistent, and that level of inconsistency continued to show itself during the playoffs as well. Nevertheless, the organization still was extremely successful. Another 59-win season, Dwight Howard would go on to win another Defensive Player of the Year award, and they found themselves in the Eastern Conference Finals for the 2nd consecutive season, but unfortunately fell short to the Boston Celtics. And believe it or not, literally a few months later after losing to the Boston Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals, they decided to trade away Vince Carter as well as Mikal Pietrus to the Phoenix Suns, and in return received Jason Richardson and Hedo Turkoglu. Yes, people, they literally just let Hedo Turkoglu walk, bring in Vince Carter, and then traded Vince Carter to bring back Hedo Turkoglu. Also, they decided to trade Rashard Lewis to the Washington Wizards, and in return they brought in Gilbert Arenas, but that really didn't work for them either. Now, by the end of the 2011 season, there was nothing really consistent about this team whatsoever. Offensively, they were up and down and finished 14th in the NBA, and there was a bunch of new faces on this team. But I actually take that back, because there was one thing that was consistent with the Orlando Magic, and that was Dwight Howard, as Dwight Howard continued to improve and at the tender age of 25 had his best season yet, averaging nearly 23 points, 14 rebounds, over 2 blocks, and not only won his 3rd consecutive Defensive Player of the Year award, but also finished 2nd in the MVP race. And so heading into the playoffs, it felt as if regardless of who you're going to surround Dwight Howard with, you were always going to be a consistent 50-win team and make deep playoff runs. Or at least that's what we thought, as the Orlando Magic were upsetted in the first round of the playoffs while being matched up against an Atlanta Hawks team that had absolutely no business of beating them whatsoever. This level of disappointment came at the wrong time, as in the summer of 2011, the whole storyline behind the Orlando Magic was what exactly were they going to do with Dwight Howard, as by the end of the season, he potentially could have been a free agent, or demanded a trade, or he could have just opted in and stayed with the Orlando Magic for another season or two. But to be completely honest with you all, nobody knew what was going to happen with Dwight Howard. Matter of fact, I don't even think Dwight Howard knew what he was going to do, as throughout the entire season, he consistently flip-flopped on what exactly he wanted to do for the foreseeable future. Like, seriously, we're talking about one day Dwight Howard saying he wants to stay with the organization, and then literally the next day, apparently he doesn't see eye to eye with the general manager and he is demanding a trade. But on March 15th, 2012, Dwight Howard decided to waive his player option and opt in one more year to stay with the Orlando Magic, committing himself through the 2013 season. Because of this, Otis Smith, who was the general manager for the Orlando Magic, decided to sit down with Dwight Howard and figure out what exactly he wanted from this situation and what exactly they could do to appeal to him so he could stay longer than just one more season. And this is the meeting in which Dwight Howard allegedly requested Stan Van Gundy to be fired.
Man, how do you know it's true?
I was told it was true by people in our management. So, you know, right from the top. Worried about winning games.
Yeah, what's our main concern right now? Jameer.
We have to stop Carmelo Anthony and the New York Knicks tonight.
And the New York Knicks.
That's exactly
That's
right.
the plan, right?
That is the plan. That's what I just said.
Dwight, are the stories true about?
Come on, man. Yeah, the stories from Dave Ping are true.
Stan just said they were true.
Yeah. What's true?
Stan just said that you wanted him fired.
I said that?
Yeah, that's what Stan said.
Who did I say that to?
According to management.
I don't know. I'm just telling you.
I'm asking you, since you guys got so many sources.
So to make a long story short, a few weeks after this interaction, Dwight Howard decided to undergo a season-ending back surgery. And with Dwight Howard being out, as well as the organization and Howard never seeing eye to eye, this thus forced the organization to trade him in the summer of 2012. So in short, even though this team's peak didn't last that long, and quite frankly, I honestly believe in 2010, if they kept Hedo Turkoglu, they really would have pushed the Boston Celtics to 7 games and potentially would have made back-to-back finals appearances. This was still a team that saw a lot of success within a short window of time. And also giving the entire team and the organization their just due, the Orlando Magic really pushed the envelope and changed the perception of what it means to be an inside-outside team. This is the first time that we had seen a team force a double team on a big man, not through the low post, but through pick and roll action. So I actually applaud this entire team, especially Stan Van Gundy in those regards, because the identity of being a rim-running big man off of the pick and roll, being a defensive stopper and a great rebounder, and surrounding that big man with a power forward who could space the floor out, is an identity that was executed by this Orlando Magic team, and they were way ahead of their time. So if you enjoyed this video, please let me know what you think about it in the comment section below. Also hit me with some more suggestions as well. Hit the like button, subscribe, and also a huge shout out goes to SeatGeek for sponsoring this video, and I'll see you all next time. Peace.